Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of None the Lesser. This is your host, Cody Buchanan. On this week's episode, we sit with a guest who hails from London, southeast London to be exact, and discovered by me through his solo project, although he does participate in a band. He's also an artist, working in very bold colors, bold lines, high contrast. We talk about all of that. We talk about where that background in art comes from, with his parents both being artists. And we talk about a whole lot more. So let's jump into this interview with Jacob Reed, also known as Jerkcurb, additionally a member of the band Horsey. You want to start off by telling us who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah. So I'm Jacob. I'm from southeast London, where I presently am, and I am a musician, I guess. I don't know. It depends where I am and who I'm talking to. Whether I say I'm an artist or a musician or jobless or employed. It depends what the scenario is. But I would like to, if I had a choice, I would like to say I am a artist/musician.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how I discovered you, so that makes sense. Have you always lived in London?
I was born and raised in southeast London, which is where I am now. My mum is actually from New York. So
okay.
Yeah, so she's from New York. I'm a dual citizen of the US and the UK.
Nice.
But yeah, grew up in England and have never lived anywhere else. But yeah.
Okay. But you've been abroad, right?
I've been to the States quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I asked this question with somebody I interviewed last week, actually, who's a resident of New York. But for you being someone who's always lived in London, how do you feel like being a resident versus a tourist there? Like, how does the perspective change? If you've never been a tourist there, maybe you don't know, but.
So how does it? I guess that's a very difficult question. So, being a resident of England, of UK, I guess it's really you take for granted things, I guess, that you wouldn't see because you've always lived here, like things. I don't know. It's a very multicultural environment. There's a lot of influences from all over the place, and I think for me growing up here, that's something I don't really see as a difference in terms of other places. But when you go out of London, yeah, that's definitely the most apparent thing. Is like London is in a similar way to New York. It's like it's always changing. There's always movement. There's always life, and so I think that kind of vitality is, I guess, something that is probably going to be recognized more from a tourist point of view. You know?
Yeah.
There's also, I don't know. I find it like there's also something weird, like in Londoners stereotypically quite sort of like to themselves in a way, like that we don't really communicate with each other when we're in public places. We're quite sort of like, but then at the same time we're very like loving in our cultural influences and our sort of like all the things I said prior to that. So I guess that's a kind of interesting contradiction. Like I went to Japan recently, well, not recently, just before all this virus things, and that was like the kind of exaggeration of that. It was like, you know, people are super reserved, but they are completely obsessive about like culture, about like foreign culture and stuff like that. Like, and yeah, maybe America's like a slightly different in terms of that. I mean, obviously America's huge, but yeah, I guess I don't know. That's a very hard question, actually, to think of as someone who's like only lived here.
Yeah, I throw curveballs here and there. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good to make me think. What do you think about London?
I've never been there. I've only been to Florida in my country and everywhere in between, and then I've been to Quebec and everywhere in between. I've never been like west, or I've never been to New York, so I'm not very well traveled. But I did notice that about Quebec City is like the culture, it's rich there, but people are a lot more closed off, but they take a lot of pride in that. So I'm sure that's probably pretty similar.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also there's something slight. Sorry, there's a train track. I don't know if that's gonna pick up, but there is definitely like a sort of, yeah, it is pride, but it's also like a kind of attitude, the kind of English people have of the sort of, we're very kind in many ways, but we're also very like reserved and sort of, it's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's definitely, you see it a lot in London.
Yeah. Almost maybe more of a humility than pride or something like that.
Maybe, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I noticed that about Japan too. I haven't been to Japan, but I worked for a Japanese company, and they're very like reserved. They don't like talking much about themselves. I actually worked with a Japanese engineer, and we would drive back and forth through the customer, and they would I would ask so many questions. I barrage people with questions because I just want to know so much about them and their culture and everything. So it kind of puts them on the spot, I guess. Maybe I'm annoying in that way, but
no, I think it's good. I think it's really good to be interested and to question everything and find out about the world. That's kind of what the most exciting thing about the earth is like how the differences, and so I think it's
absolutely. Let's get into some of your music. So Jerkcurb, you had your one and only album release so far, right? Is Accompany?
Yep.
So that seems to be kind of like a collection of works over the years.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's it actually came out a year ago today, so it's kind of a significant day for me in that.
A happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's definitely like it's an album that in retrospect, like I probably should have done quicker, or maybe the approach I had to it was, I spent a lot of time on it. I thought about it maybe a little bit too much. Who knows? It's definitely something I want to treat differently to my future projects, but at the same time, it's it's 100% like me in every aspect, and it's like it's got a lot of, at least I feel, a lot of soul into it, so it's really nice when people engage with it, or tell me that they felt something, or I don't know, that it meant something to them,
right?
Because it's it's just reassuring when you've spent so long on something that it's meaning something to someone somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's all you can really hope for, I think, when you're creating anything, is that it connects with someone.
Right.
What was the exact question again?
I guess I was just talking about how it was a collection of works over time. Like some of your music on there can be found as far back as like 2011, right? or maybe I'm
Well,
looking a
yeah.
little too
I mean,
far
like
back.
Midnight Snack was the first track of that batch of songs, and there's definitely things that unify all of the songs. There's like, whether it's about the sort of the tuning of the guitar or the sort of themes that recur in terms of the lyrics and stuff. There's definitely like, it felt like when I did that song, I'd made music before that, but when I made Midnight Snack, it was like, okay, this is going to be this new journey of exploring a sort of specific feeling in terms of, I mean, there's a range of feeling in the songs on the album, but there's definitely like a unified environment that I was kind of going back to each time. And I have other projects as well. Like I do a band called Horsey, which is more like rock, kind of more upbeat, sort of experimental stuff. But yeah, with Aircon Eden, it was like going to that same place and trying to, yeah. So I guess the time frame weirdly fits into the themes of the music. Like a lot of it is about looking backwards or looking forwards. So that kind of discontentment with the present, or a detachment from the present, or whatever it is, like so it is kind of weird. Like I think, and like wow, that was like, that took me 8 years or 7 years or whatever, and I can't believe that in many ways, because like, I didn't feel that, because I lived a life in between that. But you know, these songs were the things that I kept going back to you know, piece together.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. Some of the songs were written very quickly. Some of them took, you know, 10 demos or more.
Yeah.
To write. I'm not a trained musician. I didn't ever study music. So a lot of it is about kind of exploring and learning myself, you know, along the way. So I learned a lot about production and songwriting and through those songs. So yeah, I guess like having it been like a year now since then, it's like I found it quite strange putting that music out finally, and like then having to tour it, you know, which is great. I love playing live, but then like some of those songs felt so old. But then it almost felt like you're kind of covering your own songs in a way, and then getting other people, getting other musicians involved really gave it new life. And I like to do those songs in different ways. Like I used to play them on my own, and then play them with a 4-piece with backing singers. Then I play them with a 6-piece. So mixing around the musicians and giving and like hearing that the song is still like the same song. There's still the same sort of meat to that song, but it's just like interpreted in different ways. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very interesting time to be talking actually about that album.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with how spread out the time is between when you started making some of that music and when it came together as that solitary piece, it's pretty impressive that it maintained that same sound, because throughout the whole album, it's like, I mean, you could listen to it in order like I prefer to, or shuffle it, and it's just like, it doesn't matter where you're at, it's the consistent sound. So I think that's much to be appreciated for how well you kept to that theme and the tone.
Yeah, no, it was definitely something that I mean, I studied animation, so I'm kind of used to like these very drawn out projects, you know. To be an animator, you do have to like, you know, it's like, I think of it as kind of like building a house or something brick by brick. You sort of, you know what the whole thing is, but you kind of enjoy that sort of laborious process of piecing together something slowly. And I kind of think of the Jerkcurb project a little bit like that, in that, you know, I'm not trying to make things that are necessarily like bold and kind of bold is the wrong word, like fashionable, I guess, or kind of like I kind of want it to be something that you can sort of sit with, and kind of the details are important and you can like live with it. It's not like an instantaneous thing, because right. I do think the world is we're so inundated with everything, like all the time. We kind of need something to just sort of consume slowly and kind of sit with. So I guess that, yeah,
absolutely. I think we're in a world where right now it's like everyone just wants the single. They want a single and they want to just consume that one track that's like hot right now. But it's like, I don't know. I think we as humans need to consume a larger piece of art, whether it be music or a gallery or whatever. It's just it's refreshing to discover all these new artists that are focused on the project, not just the single.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I prefer to listen to music as an album.
Yeah.
And a body of work. It's like more, to me, it's more satisfying. There's more like nuances and more, I don't know. It's just, it's more meditative. Yeah.
I mean, I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that can be said for any difference of energy. Like, it doesn't need to be necessarily calm to feel meditative. But yeah, I think like when I listen to your music though, there seems to be like a delicate balance to the sound you're producing, where too many layers kind of washes out the detail, but too few layers eliminates that sense of space that you're creating with the sound. How did you discover that sound, and what challenges did you overcome to like maintain it?
That's a really good question. Well, I guess when I started, I was like, I'd always like loved film and into film soundtracks and sort of music that evoked a kind of a mood, almost without words, just like very kind of emotionally, whatever. Like, that's what music is really. But I think the kind of minimalism of film soundtracks, often the kind of the layering, it's like it sits underneath the narrative. That's obviously a big influence. And then when I was about 16, I got really into this. I don't know if you know My Bloody Valentine, the Irish band, but they're sort of shoegaze, kind of very, very big, like 80s band. They use like guitar music as a kind of like almost in the same way as electronic music. It's like more of a sensation, as opposed to like the songwriting is there, but it's more about this kind of like visceral kind of experience. And I think the way Kevin Shields, who's a big influence, he's a guitarist, he's the main songwriter. Again, they've only released 3 albums across 30 years, and so that kind of cult sort of obsessiveness about the mixing and the kind of feeling of music is a big influence for me, and also like ambient music and that kind of thing. The sound kind of, I didn't really think about it. It was just a fusion of a lot of the interests, my influences, and having a guitar and having the restriction of an instrument to kind of like the limitations are very important, I think, in creativity. Like you're bounded by either, which is a problem with art, with the age that we live in. Not necessarily a problem. It's a blessing as well, because we are exposed to infinite influence more than any time ever in the past. We're discovering music from all time periods, so we have this massive influx of information all the time. So I think to process that, you need to be restricted by something. So for me, it was an electric guitar. It was like, I want to try and explore my interest, but like through one sort of one instrument. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really, it's the electric guitar is probably the biggest. It's a very obvious answer, but.
Nothing but your sweater, mahogany floor.
It's very prominent. It's used in a way that creates atmosphere, and I think that's why your music stood out to me. Was I love the tone throughout. Like any place in Aircon Eden, like I enjoy where I'm at, but it's just the guitar and like the vocals are very easy to either fall into or just have going on in the background. And the same with the guitar. And I think they work with each other in that way.
I think that's a very, because some people, like, I know when the reviews came out, a lot of it was kind of like, if it was a mixed review, it would be like, oh, this is kind of like slow and kind of not so eventful, or like, and that's something that I kind of was like always trying to go for. You know, it was like a sort of, there is like dynamics there, but it's like it is definitely like, really what I'm trying to make is like music that I find kind of therapeutic, or sort of like almost like medicinal in terms of how it, like making that kind of music is quite healing for me, but also like is trying to make that interesting. It's like that sort of like balance between ambient sort of like relaxing music, but then also it has to be interesting. You have to be, the attention has to be held, but it's also like a kind of passive experience. So I think that there's kind of disparate kind of influences of like passive and active, to like summarize it in quite a simple way.
Yeah. There's something about the human attention span where either you can get into something like that, or like you said at the mixed reviews, like it's like if a band puts out an album that's too much of one sound, it's just, it doesn't sit with some people. But I don't know, I think there's something to be said about both parties.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I like I said, have no problem at any stage of the album enjoying it. So but with Aircon Eden, it's kind of like it is relaxing and therapeutic, but it's also kind of dark sounding. Like,
yeah,
the space in there is, dark. And if you like had a genre to define it by, or you could even make up your own genre, what do you think you would call it?
This is something that when people ask me, so that they're not familiar with my music, and they say what kind of genre it is, I genuinely do not know how to. I've never quite found like the words that would satisfy like my own, because then I don't know, like I usually just say, it's kind of like cinematic, but it's also kind of pop.
Yeah.
Because like I am trying to make like, the songs, I want them to have hooks. I want them to have like things that do stick in your head. But at the same time, I do want it to be, telling a story without the lyrics, or without the kind of obvious sort of, so yeah, again, it kind of comes back to that thing about the active and the passive. So I guess the genre. Oh God, no, I can't do it.
Yeah, my buddies and I, we always play this game right here, where we're just like, we find music and we try to give it its own genre, like just make up some ridiculous name or whatever. So I tried to do that for your Aircon Eden album, and I came up with two names. I came up with Surfing in the Void Rock, or Void Surf Rock, because the psychedelic guitar, or like I think I like the other one I came up with is melancholy picnic pop.
Wow, melancholy picnic.
I don't
like
know.
that.
I just
I know one that I came up with, which is emo exotica.
Oh, there you go.
Because you've got the exotica, which is like that's like the kind of 50s influence of the sort of that kind of tiki kind of Polynesian elevator music, and then you've got the sort of and that's very American. And then you've got the emo, which is like which is me kind of plastered over that.
The dark part of it.
But I think I don't think anyone would take that seriously. But I don't particularly want. I don't think a genre should be a serious thing.
No, I don't think so either. I think basically like that game we play is just like, tell me what it is without giving me some generic genre. Give me something that makes me feel it before I hear it. So, but yeah, the first interview I had, it's up now with Ted Feehan of Monster Rally, and he does like the exotica hip hop.
Oh, so wow.
He takes like old exotica beats or vinyls, samples them, and then puts them over his own music, and kind of what we were just talking about, where limiting your I guess your arsenal that you have for your music creates its own challenge, but it makes it a little less challenging in a way than having everything available to you. But actually I did name drop you in that one because we were talking about his side project, or one of his other aliases. It's called Shamarg. It's kind of like surf rock, like psychedelic sounding. And I was like, yeah, this guy Jerkcurb, he kind of creates like it's not slide guitar, but it's something like that psychedelic guitar. So yeah, you came up in that one. So
thanks.
Yeah. You've got some earlier tracks on Bandcamp that didn't quite make it on the album and are kind of, I honestly don't know if they would fit on the album. It's a little bit different. So,
it's very, very, very lo-fi.
Yeah.
I actually did I had a whole album on SoundCloud, which was all of that era of songs where I used to basically it was when I was still living at home with my parents, and they'd go away for the weekend, and I'd be like, okay, I've got the house to myself for 2 days. I'm going to just finish a song.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the complete opposite of the process that came after that, which was like here's a time restriction, and let's see if we can write and finish a song in that. And I do really like some of the I took the album off because when I started doing the Aquarena stuff, I just didn't think it really fit with that same. It's almost like it was a premature version of what it turned into. But I did think about maybe putting that stuff back online sometime.
Yeah.
It's very badly recorded.
I mean, that's definitely a sound today with the lo-fi. People are just doing albums on their phones and barely mastering it, and it's still gaining popularity.
It's true.
But I think with Erkan Eden, it just needs that clean sound. So, but yeah, as a different different taste of your music, that would be cool to hear that older music.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought, I'm kind of always in two minds about how much content I share, because there's definitely there's something to be said about holding things back and not just sharing every aspect of your life and your development or whatever. But then there's also, you can kind of become too obscure if you don't put something out. My dad, he's a painter, and he's very against social media. because of that reason. But then I'm like, Dad, no one's going to ever see your work. You know, he does it every day. He's in the studio painting. He's been doing it 40 years. But so I eventually made him an Instagram, and
Cool.
I've kind of he's like glancing over like what is that? The people. He's like I know he's actually interested.
Yeah, he doesn't want to admit it, but yeah, it's a delicate balance. Social media, you can use it to your advantage, obviously, or you can get sucked into it. So, got to find that middle. But that's cool. He's got an Instagram. I think I saw the other day you posted something to your story that was from your mom, though.
Yeah. So my mom, she's kind of. I get a lot of my interest in trying to do everything, kind of the jack of all trades type sort of mindset that I often have when I'm like, oh, I can do that because I don't know how to do it. I'm going to try that. Well, that's interesting. Like, I don't know what that is. I've never done a like 3D sculpture, so I'm going to try that. And that's really what my mum has always done. Whilst my dad has always done oil painting his entire life, my mum's very much done everything.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's 3D or she's made like etchings, you know, painting, illustration, all kinds of stuff, embroidery, clothing,
Wow.
and singing. She's in bands as well. So I think, yeah, it's funny because I'm an only child, and I do think a lot about when I see people like siblings, and I kind of notice how different they are, and I'm kind of like, wow, that's so interesting that you share so much of the same DNA or whatever, and yet you're so different. But then when I think of my family, I am literally like this weird, exact combination in many ways. Obviously, like have many disagreements about many things, but in terms of what I've ended up doing with my life, seems to be a kind of weird accumulation of them.
Yeah. That's really cool though, because it seems like first and foremost your family is built of artists then.
Yeah. I'm just my parents. The family from around that is not there's
not so much.
Not so much creatives. A lot of doctors.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff.
So you and your immediate family then all ended up falling into the arts though, in one way or another.
I think that's also like me being an only child. It was kind of like they kind of, because of that, they could sort of carry on, you know, making the art, and like, because they weren't like looking after so many children or whatever. It was very much, they also had me quite late in life. They were like, they both lived, my dad moved to America when he was in 1978. So I guess he was about 18. I think, or something like that. Anyway, he got a grant to a painting grant, which paid for him to go to Rhode Island and study painting. So he lived in America for 10 years, and that's where he met my mum. They both studied at RISD, so Rhode Island School of Design. And then they moved back to the UK in like the late 80s. And so it's interesting. Yeah, like they've kind of always kind of kept their practice up, you know, never compromised, even though they've never tried to, you know, they've had to compromise in that they haven't like managed to make a living out of the art they've made. But that kind of mindset of, you know, you're just doing things because it's like, it keeps you alive. You know, you make art because whether or not you can make a career out of it, it's like you just do it because it's part of your routine. It's part of your DNA. Right. And that's something that I've tried to maintain. It's like, I have to make something where like to feel good or to feel like I have a place, you know, I would, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's definitely served as a great outlet then. And do you feel that, or I guess there seems to be more of like a visual art than with your dad and maybe even your mom. Was there music involved with them as well?
Just no, really. My mum only started playing music when I was a kid, so she hadn't done that. That was something that she just decided to start. And then for me, music kind of came from. It was something that came way after the art for me. It was like I had to kind of find my own way in that. Sorry about the train.
It's fine.
But yeah, no, it's I don't know.
So your dad's Instagram, is that something we can find?
Stephen.f.reed. That's Stephen with a PH.
I want to see his art. Because you said he's an oil painter.
Yeah. Mainly landscapes, but like his early stuff is pretty weird. Definitely quite sort of dark. Some of the early stuff. He's really into like the apocalypse as a theme. So he always paints like these big sort of.
That's a fun subject.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think I found it now. Let me see here. My wife's an acrylic artist. She's always wanted to get into oil.
Yeah. Yeah, acrylic is definitely like better in many ways. It's definitely easier. So you can kind of
more approachable.
Oil is. I mean, I work for an artist as my day job, where I basically like work in a studio painting, and I use oil paints for that. So it's something that I kind of like wrote it off when I was quite young, just because I saw my dad doing it, and I was like, that's something it's too messy. It's not instant enough. But in the past 2 years, I've been like, getting slowly the technique down a little bit.
Yeah, oil takes a lot of patience.
Yeah, because it's always wet. It's like the paint stays wet for a long time.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like moving it around it's very subtle in how you manipulate the paint. Acrylics much more like you think of it and then you put it down and it's there. I would definitely like to do more painting, definitely.
Yeah, these paintings from your dad are incredible. They're beautiful.
I mean, thank you. I'll pass the message.
Yeah, I always love how you can get a lot of texture out of oil, and he seems to use that to his advantage. So that's great. And you're right. Some apocalyptic stuff in here.
Yeah.
This the Mariner and the Meteor.
I'm in a few of this.
Oh, are you?
I'm this baby in a rubber ring with a dog jumping over the wall. That's me.
Oh.
There's a lot more that I haven't uploaded of his. I'm kind of spacing it out.
Is there a story with this one, with the balcony with you and the rubber ring?
If there is, I don't even have any idea what it could be. Oh, this is me with my fake twin brother.
Oh, nice. Is there a story there? Were you supposed to have a twin or?
No, I have no idea. And it's one of those things I probably just wouldn't ever get around to asking.
Yeah.
I need, like, what you're doing to me, I need to do this to my dad and be like, okay, tell me about this. It's like you just don't really interact with your family in that way.
Yeah. That's really cool. I like that art. Does your mom have one or no?
No, she does. Yeah, she's got.
Oh, cool.
What is it? A Dory Fertig art or something? I can't remember. She has a made-up name.
Oh,
A Dory Fertig art. Yeah, as in that's her real name, but it doesn't come from anywhere. It's like her mother made it up.
Oh,
people always like Edori.
Oh, there it is. And she's more broad. She kind of does a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that. Wow. She seems to have embraced social media.
She's definitely into social media. More than me.
That's great.
Definitely.
So your art, though, kind of like looking at those two and comparing. Yours is a lot of contrast, and I'm not entirely sure what medium. I would guess marker, but am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's I mainly just down to this sort of fact that like London is tiny and expensive. I tend to work in sketchbooks. I tend to work small. I'm actually currently right now in my friend's art studio. So I'm kind of testing the waters. Like I would kind of like to have a space, but it's just too expensive. So I tend to kind of work in sketchbooks or quite small and paint markers, watercolor markers, pens, and then a lot of printmaking. Like I do some screen prints and t-shirts, which is very flat color. I'm kind of I've always been into like cartoons and comic books, so I think that kind of almost like the sort of lowbrow kind of bold kind of, I don't know,
like heavy line work, it looks like. And
yeah, that's kind of a big influence.
Only a few colors used throughout, really.
Yeah. I think that again, that's like a restriction thing. It kind of helps me to be more. I feel like in my head, it's like I'm more creative if I have less to work with, because I'm not thinking about the options, about the infinite kind of color palettes. I'm like kind of boxing myself in and therefore trying to make the most out of that.
Yeah,
I don't know, some kind of weird metaphor for something. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got some like you actually have some comics, so like the one you made for the Black Lives Matter. I have your Instagram up right now, so
yeah. No, I did a lot more comics. If it didn't take so long, like I just find the bane of my life is that I have like there's so many things I want to do, I just can't do it all, and like I do get, I want to make a comic, I want to do this, I want to do this, but reality is like I only have enough time to do X amount, enough energy to do X amount. So definitely like, the comic influence is something that it's definitely apparent, I think. And I definitely read a lot of comics.
What kind of comics did you read?
Well, when I was a kid, it was always like Batman stuff.
Okay, so superheroes and stuff.
Yeah, but not really into like any other superheroes. It was always like it was only Batman.
Okay.
So I like the kind of the darkness of it and the sort of like he's human. He's you can relate to him as a character, and I kind of like, I don't know, but just the sort of the dark deco kind of aesthetic is really satisfying to me.
Yeah.
And then, when I got older, it was like Robert Crumb. I got really into him, and Daniel Clowes and Chris Ware, a lot of these American artists that kind of broke through in the 80s. Art Spiegelman, Gary Panter. Yeah, just a lot of these kind of alternative, weird American artists that kind of sort of cultural criticism in art form, and sort of just kind of making sense of the world through sort of magic realism, but also kind of grounded in despair and reality and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm not terribly well versed when it comes to comics. I have some on my shelf. I mostly pick them up if I'm like, a comic book store, and like just drop in and grab something like really dark and sick and twisted kind of. It's usually what I reach for.
It's very like overwhelming, I find, because there is just so much, and I think I'm quite specific. Often I get put off by like, I like make an instinctive decision, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to read that. I don't like the art. And then sometimes I'll sit with it and I realize I actually do really like it and I get something from it, but I often be a little bit too opinionated with my preference.
But the Batman stuff's great because, like you said, he's just a man, but he's also dealing with a lot of like truly psychotic villains, whereas like a lot of the other ones are like bent on power and control, but it's like, no, Batman's enemies are like out of their mind. So, I think that's why I've taken appeal to Batman too.
Yeah.
Not so much the comics, but Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever get the chance, like the stuff from the late 80s, the Alan Moore stuff and the kind of Frank Miller stuff's really amazing. Like, yeah, really like visually. It was the sort of blueprint for all the films, you know, kind of taking Batman away from this kind of silly, kind of campy 60s character and kind of creating this kind of dark detective thing.
Still breaking wishbones over you, over you.
Your art, then, you had mentioned, is kind of like your day job right now. You do like a lot of illustration projects.
So it's I'm just kind of juggling like a lot of things. Obviously, because of this year, I haven't been touring. I mean, I managed to go to Japan, and then I did a tour with King Cruel in March. So that was really great.
That was awesome.
Went all around Europe, Scandinavia, all kinds of places. And then like the second I got back to England, it was like COVID lockdown. So this year's just been like music, very, very quiet, trying to get a record out with my other band. And that's been tough because of the music industry just sort of on hold. Just doing, I have this job, which I kind of go back to here and then. It's really fun. People are great. And, it's what I love doing, which is just like making art, but it's just happens to be for someone else. So I do that. And then when I'm not doing that, it's either like, illustration projects. So anytime I get a commission, although I'm not really pushing for that because I think that takes a certain dedication and kind of almost like it's like you can't just kind of do that half-heartedly. You have to like really be in it and be very business minded to be a successful illustrator. And I kind of learned that a few years ago, that I'm maybe too fragmented in terms of what I want to do to like really pursue that. So it's when people come to me and they're like, hey, could you do a design for this? Or, you know, and I'm like, yeah, if I've got time, I'd like to do that. Or so if it's like basically when I get the opportunity. And I always like do my own stuff as well, obviously. So making T-shirts and prints and that kind of thing. I have to just keep busy.
Yeah. Got to keep busy, especially in today's world with everything going on. You mentioned touring with King Cruel. That's really sweet. Love his music. I was watching a music video of yours the other day, and I saw this comment, and I kind of want to see or hear your reaction, I guess, or your impression. But somebody commented and said, this is like if King Cruel, M. Ward, and Radiohead had the sexiest baby ever.
I don't actually know who M. Ward is.
I don't know either.
Obviously, I know who Radiohead is, and I obviously know who King Cruel is. So yeah, that's. I mean, I grew up with Archie. Like he's my oldest friend, so we grew up next door to each other. So there's like
awesome.
There's gonna be always gonna make that comparison, and that's something I've always been happy to be associated by. And his brother's in my band, Jack, and he's an incredible artist. Does all of Archie's visuals, and I think having these friendships from basically the age of 0 has been an incredibly positive influence and positive competition as well. Like the kind of like getting inspired by each other and wanting to like make more to kind of impress one another and that sort of thing. Sorry.
No, you're fine. That's really cool though that you guys like grew up together.
Absolutely. And I think that is, again, like one of the things about London that I do love is that people do tend to, it's so dense and populated that you kind of make these friendships that last, and I think people, at least most of the people that I knew growing up, I still know in terms of the people that were interested in art or music. Mm-hmm. And still like really close friends. And I think that's quite rare to have like these really long, lifelong friendships, I think, maybe because the world is so big and you'd think that people would move around a bit more.
Yeah.
They lived out.
Yeah, I stayed pretty confined to a pretty small area, so
yeah.
I haven't moved out of my state at all. So
yeah,
and
that's quite rare. Americans, like my cousin, he's from New York, but he now lives in Oregon. He lives in Portland. So and I think his friends in Portland have all come from all over the place, and seems to be a bit more of a thing in America, at least as far as I'm aware of this kind of feeling of like just getting up and going somewhere else and driving to a new place because it's so big and varied.
Yeah, I want to travel the U.S. and a whole lot of places, but I grew up in a small town and I moved closer to Detroit. I didn't even move to the city, and I was just like, I hate traffic, and I moved back out to the country, and it's just like,
wow. Probably hate London. London is just like one big traffic jam. Like the whole city is just permanently.
Yeah, I can handle like a weekend of the city, and then it's like, all right, I got to go somewhere else. But yeah, I love like cities and the culture and everything around them. Every city is so different, like a different life, and I love to enjoy it for a short amount of time, but I can't live there. I've already determined it. But there's a lot of Americans that'll grow up in a small town or even just like a suburb or whatever and just say, I got to move out to a bigger city or the West Coast or whatever. So yeah, I guess it isn't terribly common to just stay in like 2 of 3 counties or whatever like I have. So I don't like making comparisons too much when it comes to music, but I don't know. Have you ever heard of Mr. Bungle?
I love Mr. Bungle.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
California is a huge influence, that album specifically.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say it sounds a lot like the vocals and the instrumental work in California is so comparable to Air Con Eden for me. And I didn't know if that was.
There's actually a song called The Air Conditioned Nightmare, which is one of the tracks of that album, which I only made that connection like kind of towards the end of my album. I was like, oh, wow. But I was into Mr. Bungle when I was younger, and it definitely informed the music of my other band, Horsey, which has had a few different lineups, a few different names, but generally the same kind of style of music, which has always been quite sort of visceral, kind of punk inspired, weird kind of music. And definitely like Primus was a band that I've seen a bunch of times live. Me and my friends, that's kind of our sort of connection, has been kind of this sort of obscure music that's quite sort of like energetic and strange, and definitely like Mike Patton and Mr. Bungle, big inspiration. But yeah, that's interesting. Like I don't think anyone's really made that connection with Jerkcurb so much, but definitely me. Like I use Pink Cigarette a lot when I'm like mixing a track as a reference in terms of how low he's kind of got that kind of character, this like crooner character, but it's not just your average, like there's something sinister there, but it's also, you're not quite sure why.
I only made the connection like a couple of weeks ago after reaching out to you, because as soon as I reach out to someone, I do as much digging in again as I can to find even more than I already knew. And I saw, because I was looking into Mr. Bungle, because like, this makes me think of Pink Cigarette. Like, I can't remember what song, but I was like, yeah, totally thinking of that. And I actually saw they're coming out with another album. I don't know if you saw that.
I know, yeah, it's like a sort of hardcore punk.
Yeah, like thrash metal or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're going real old.
I heard one track and I was confused, but I think that's kind of what you come to expect with that band. But
yeah,
I would definitely, if the opportunity came, I would definitely see them. I wish I was around, or I was around. I wish I was old enough to appreciate them at the time, you know, in the late 90s.
Yeah.
When they were at the kind of prime creatively.
Yeah.
Because it's been interesting.
Yeah.
That's why we have YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My buddies and I discovered them in high school. So like a little over 10 years ago now. And yeah, always love that sound. Always looking for somebody that's willing to do something different and weird, which is kind of like your music's not weird, but that's kind of why I fell into it, because it reminded me of that.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's cool that you actually took inspiration from that. I'm always afraid to throw it out because I don't want to like compare to someone you don't know about, or you're like, hell no.
No, it's it's only say it's someone that I don't like, and then they say like, oh, your music reminds me of this, and I'm like, thank you, and I'm like trying to be polite, but if it's someone I actually do genuinely love, and it's a big compliment.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you use it as a reference point for your music, even. So
yeah, definitely,
it's really cool.
Yeah, I usually make, because I'm quite specific about. I listen to a lot of music. Like I listen to way more music than I make, and I listen to a lot more music than the art I make. So I'm very specific when it comes to like mixing or sounds. You know, I can get very specific, and I definitely vocals. I'm always like Pink Cigarette vocals.
Yeah. That song's incredible. It's just like a journey every time.
Yeah, fan made videos to a lot of the songs on that album that someone made on YouTube, I think about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
they're pretty good. They're very low budget, but they're good. They're good, like well put together videos.
Is it the guy with the dress on and everything, or is that the actual?
Is that from the car and he's putting the lipstick?
Yeah, no, that music video. I love the song when I heard it, but my buddy showed me that back in high school, the video, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. With your music or with your album, is there a story that you think you're trying to tell with the album as a whole, or a lesson that you're trying to make people walk away with?
I don't think I was that intelligent to really like be that focused, you know. I think there's like moods, there's feelings that are consistent, and there's themes, but I would be lying if I was to say there's like some kind of moral story or anything. Like, yeah, there's definitely like narrative really influences the way I write and make art. Is like very much narrative driven. Like I use characters to kind of like explore like things that I'm feeling, maybe, you know. And I think that's quite a common practice for some artists to kind of inhabit different characters. But I'm not trying to say say anything like too profound. Just really like, you know, it's very personal. It's very introspective in a lot of ways, but each song is a different thing, I think. Yeah. The overall themes. There was a lot of things we discussed earlier, but there's a lot of things that tie the whole thing together. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess talking on the theme, and I think you gather it through the music, but like even in the music videos, in some cases there seems to be kind of like a element that points to like the desert in a way. I don't know if that's like an influence on you at all. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in like using like almost classic genres to kind of like go back to and sort of see if you can explore those things. And like desert is certain songs like I'll think of like as a location, like I think a lot in terms of like spaces visually, and I'm like, well, Voodoo Saloon, it's like this place in the middle of the desert, and it's like no one goes there, and you're not sure why there's an event happening there. And the music video for that was like, okay, we've done a prom video, an apocalypse prom. Let's do a desert video. So it's like it's often like a visual that inspires the thing. But yeah, I don't know if like the desert really features in a bunch of songs. Maybe a few, but definitely specifically Voodoo Saloon. That is definitely like a desert song. And also like country music, like old country music definitely informs a lot, as much as like old jazz and stuff. It's borrowing these like tropes that have existed for decades, and re-exploring them, or trying to make the traditional like a contemporary thing, I guess.
Yeah, your music videos do take us to a few places though, like the desert you said, the prom, and then the Aircon Eden. It's kind of like what am I being told here? Like of a dystopian kind of.
The idea of it was the Aircon Eden was this global shopping mall, because weirdly shopping malls have inspired quite a lot with the record, and I actually wrote a dissertation on shopping malls for my degree in animation, which they were like, why the heck are you writing about shopping malls? You're studying animation, you should be writing about Disney. I was like, no, shopping malls. So I wanted to I just kind of got really familiar with the entire history of shopping malls, and this guy, Victor Gruen, who accidentally created the modern shopping mall, who was an environmentalist, and he was obsessed with this idea that man and nature were at war with each other. So he created these kind of environments where plant life and stuff would grow, and like a sort of like a greenhouse type thing. And then there was like a gift shop would be in one of them, and then that took over from the nature, and then that became they were like, oh, let's put a parking lot in these places. And then soon enough later they became modern shopping malls. But the first ones, I came across these like really amazing postcards, these American shopping malls from the 50s, and they were like genuinely beautiful places with like amazing colors. And so like elevator music kind of obviously a big inspiration, and just that kind of retail culture and the kind of origins, and looking back to how we got to where we are now. So it's all kind of informs. So the Aircon Eden video, anyway, sorry to ramble.
No,
that's
fine.
kind of trying to make sense of all these kind of studies and stuff, and research that I've curated over the years. And that was fun because that was a collaborative project with me and a guy called Max and a guy called Wilby. We kind of all brought different things to the table, and we created this like miniature shopping mall in out of like cardboard and stuff. And, but yeah, to go back, the idea is that I am the CEO of the Aircon Eden, and I'm kind of like bored by how perfect I've kind of worked really hard to get to this point of like owning this structure, and then I'm kind of almost bored by it, and I'm not quite sure. It kind of went in all sorts of directions.
Yeah.
There's something. I'm quite far away from that now. Like I haven't actually watched that in a while, and I haven't thought about it. But there was definitely some logical explanations to most of this that happened in that video.
Yeah, the videos themselves are really, I think they're incredibly well done for as small of a. It sounds like it was a pretty small group that worked on it.
Yeah, I've always done stuff like DIY and kind of, because you can spend longer on it. You don't have to like get it done to like label deadlines. And I think coming from an art background, like I'd rather do it slowly and do it the way I want it to, and have less budget.
Yeah.
The moment you put money involved, it's like you have expectations, you have more people you're working with, so therefore you have to pay them, and then it becomes, but what money does, what budgets does, is just saves time, kind of just like, but you compromise a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And I've just the way that I've always worked is like trying to make the most out of the smallest. Saying that, it would be great to get like a big 20K budget on a music video. Yeah. That would be kind of fun to see what you can do with that.
Yeah.
The cardboard is a recurring theme in a lot of my videos. There's a lot of things made of cardboard because it's free. You can go to any supermarket and they often have boxes and boxes of it. So you have to pay for it, and then paint and cardboard, and you can get a lot done with that.
Yeah.
And I just like
Voodoo Saloon. What was that?
Yeah, Voodoo Saloon. I know. I was just saying, I like the charm of like making stuff yourself.
Yeah. There's a lot more to the art or a lot more to the music when you do that. So that's awesome. But in Voodoo Saloon, though, that like the plane and all that is cardboard.
That plane is not even a real plane. There's a model plane that we got off eBay that's literally about that big, and then there's just a piece of cardboard with some holes in, and that's
like the window for you.
Yeah, just the window. Yeah,
that's really sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people would be like, no, we gotta use a real plane, we gotta actually like an explosion and everything. But like, I love the pieces that are like, let's get as creative as we can with as little imprint or footprint as we can.
I mean, that was really like my dad. He has a studio near where we all live, and we just used that space. We had like basically as long as we wanted, and a bunch of cardboard. And it's like, what can we do with this space and this cardboard? And lighting is a big part of video, like atmosphere. Smoke. We had like a smoke machine we borrowed. But most of it is just paint and, green screen, and then recreating stuff. Those guys they're like my really close friends. They're two twins called Michael and Boric, and they've gone on to do some really great videos since then.
Yeah.
They've done a couple of King Cruel videos, and just like really good like UK music.
That's really
called
sweet.
CC Wade.
They're called what?
CC Wade.
CC Wade. So we can find more of their work through those other artists in that name.
Yeah.
I have to check it out because they did a really good job working with you.
I think it's always good to collaborate with your friends.
Yeah, I've got a pretty tight knit group of like 5 friends. It's like always been us, and we're always like working on different things creatively and leaning on each other. So it's important. But,
definitely.
I noticed through the album though, Eric Eden, there's some samples that kind of like that are about like kind of taking care of the environment, returning to the environment.
Yeah.
Is there like an influence on like you based on like the state of our global climate change as we're seeing it?
I think it all comes back to that Victor Gruen stuff about like him thinking that he is basically this kind of weird point of view that maybe like he was trying to help the environment by building these aircon Edens, these places, and also like that kind of not pathetic fallacy, the irony, I guess, of the fact that he's almost like created this capitalist structure that's gotten us where we are in a way, even though shopping malls themselves are just part of like the evolution of consumerism. They're just one facet to it. And then you're now more and more often seeing these like derelict shopping malls, these kind of dead real estate, this dead environments. But the underlying message is that we need to change like how we approach consumerism because we consume so much. And I think like I wasn't ever trying to preach anything, you know, I wasn't trying to say that, but I did find, so one of the things is my dad just talking in the car for the start of Midnight Snack. And that's just, he was just rambling about something. I just decided to record him and put that in. And he happened to be talking about like this Eden, this place. And this was back in 2011 when I recorded him. And he was talking about some thing that he'd read or seen. I'm not actually sure what he's talking about, but the content of what he was saying was essentially like utopias and kind of growing your own allotments. And he's like a really big sort of self-sufficient, you know, solar energy, you know, all that kind of stuff, like just making sure you're not reliant on too much of consumer products or
industry and then all that.
Exactly, industry. But yeah, and then the other sample is from the Aquarena Springs, which was a real place that used to be a water park / nature conservatory in Texas. And I got really obsessed again via the visual introduction. Like I found these postcards and I just became obsessed with this place, like how it looked and the kind of strangeness about it.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
All right, Joe, thanks a lot. Loading the whole song. Texas at the Aquarena Springs.
When we come back, we're going to find out what the people here at Aquarena Springs are doing to protect species which are on the verge of extinction.
This is the total world population of all of these creatures is right here in the Spring Lake area. For over 60,000 years, 150 million gallons of water.
And then that audio sample was from when it closed down in the I think it was the early 90s, and they had all these plant and marine life that they didn't know what to do with because they were closing it down. And there's just something kind of sad about that. I found it kind of evocative of a certain, like this feeling of a bygone era, and a kind of it just fitted with I thought it fitted with the music.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what those two samples are.
Yeah. And so then that does take a pretty big factor, though, like climate change and everything. And
yeah.
Obviously, the introduction of shopping malls being this haven for human and natural life to interact turns into this actual like kind of like gray, dull piece of architecture.
Exactly.
That we see today. Yeah, that's very interesting. I like the correlation between all that. So, do you have any sort of advice for people that are creating either art, writing, music, whatever?
I would say the only thing, and I've said this to a few people when people like message me on Instagram or whatever, and they're like starting out, or they've kind of like struggling to, you know, feeling like they're not good enough or whatever. I think I always just say like, you know, don't get, you know, if you have an idea, that's a legitimate thing. And like, no one can tell you that's not, you know, valid, and you just got to stick with it and have try your best to just have confidence in that. And like, if something's old to you, say an idea is like 4 years old, 5 years old, as soon as you put that out into the world, it's new to everyone else. Like it doesn't. So I think just like being true, like trying to be, what I'm trying to say is like following
True to
through
yourself,
things.
or
Yeah, like don't feel like you've missed the boat on something, or don't feel because the way that life is, everything changes so quickly and so fast, and like I think you've just got to, see things through and just kind of pursue them. Perseverance, I guess.
yeah.
But I mean, I can't really like say I'm not like a successful musician, so I can't say like, oh, do it this way and you'll be rich and make a successful career. I'm just saying, if you for integrity purposes, like just be, follow things through and be persistent.
Yeah.
Have faith in your ideas.
Yeah. A lot of people struggle with, not seeing the results immediately or something, or, getting too in their head in the project and abandon it too soon to really see where it could have gone. So
yeah,
that's great advice. And what are you interested or consuming right now? Any TV shows, music, or books?
Honestly, I don't know what it is. Like I've just stopped my laptop broke. So I've naturally just kind of stopped watching things, which is probably quite good. So the last thing I watched, which I love, I saw me and my girlfriend Bella, we saw what's that film called? Brief Encounter, which is a 1940s British film about two people that meet at a train station, and they're both married and they both have kids, and they basically it's like a classic romance, but it was really amazing to see just how it looked visually, and the kind of black and white, the sort of smoke and the look of it, and also how poignant and relevant it is, and also like that it was a snapshot from an era where people were so repressed, and this idea of this affair was like this like massive thing in 1948 or whatever, and that made me think like this is the world had just been through a war, people were killing each other, terrible things happened, but yet we're still so reserved, and kind of just made me think about how different we are now, and our kind of attitudes towards expression has changed. So anyway, that film was great. What else? But like the only film I've seen in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Music wise, I've been delving into American composer called Lou Harrison, who is like again kind of mid-century composer, but his music was informed by a lot of world music, like Gamalian music. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but just very interesting, like melodically very interesting, very quite modern sounding music. So yeah, Lou Harrison's doing a lot for me right now. Moondog, been revisiting his stuff a lot. Another kind of strange outsider musician. I could probably go through my Spotify plays and sort of see what off the top of my head. New music. I know Bill Callahan just put out a record, and I need to check that out, but I haven't done yet. There's a band called Crack Cloud from Vancouver, I think, and their album was quite interesting. I wasn't like blown away by it, but I think they were doing something kind of cool. Yeah, my mind always goes blank when I
that's fine.
think about what I've been listening to, because there's so much.
Yeah, I mentioned in one of my past interviews how I'm so blessed to have Spotify, because it's introduced me to so much. But at some points, it's like introducing me to too much.
Much, yeah. It's kind of a curse and a blessing. Like, I definitely like. There's something about the days of iTunes that I sort of reminisce about fondly. Like just the kind of feeling of owning that music and like, you know, finding the best MediaFire download link or getting a CD from the library and just kind of curating it myself, you know.
Yeah.
And now it's like we just have this infinite library. I end up just listening to more of the same stuff almost because it's like, it's too much. And maybe the value of the music has sort of changed a lot. The music industry is in quite a strange place.
Would you say that's mostly because of where we find ourselves today?
I think it's a bunch of things. I think there's obviously that, but I even mean prior to like COVID-19, like just the way you don't have to have a huge label to, you know, get by. You know, you can do it. People just uploading stuff to YouTube and getting massive like amount of fans, and then just like for all the things that are kind of written about a lot at the moment, just like how the music industry, how our approach to music is changing, how we value it is changing. I always like I try my hardest to own physical records. You know, I find there's something irreplaceable about, you know, the kind of tactile nature of a record or even CD. Like when I went to Japan, I was amazed at how popular CDs were. Like people love CDs.
That's really cool. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, it's huge. Like there's Tower Records, which was like massive in Tokyo, just like 7 floors of like CDs, and people just love them.
Wow.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm really big into vinyls, but
yeah, I do kind of like agree with the idea that music should be accessible to everyone, and like I like the idea of music not being monetized so much, like not being so expensive, not the theory of that I completely agree with, but I definitely think just for personal enjoyment about music, I think possessing things is definitely the best way to consume things. I don't know, maybe not. I kind of like disagreeing with myself.
You need a balance. Yeah. I like to grab, like if there's an album I love, I grab it on vinyl typically. Because cassettes are coming back too, though. Like people are really digging cassettes.
Cassettes, yeah, definitely, yeah. They just don't sound. They sound different. They sound. Yeah, there's certain things I think sound better on cassette.
Yeah,
like I had this album by this English band called Woo, WOO, from the 80s, and I've only heard it on cassette, and then they remastered it and put it on Spotify, and I was listening to it like, oh, it's so clear, and like I can hear this, like, because there's something mysterious about like the kind of fidelity of cassettes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to hear something in a fresh, like when they remaster stuff, it's like weird. But
it is weird.
Yeah,
you get used. The brain kind of gets used to whatever it is.
Yeah,
that's what I always say about mixing as well. Like when it comes to like mixing music, it's like as soon as it's any state it's in, when it's out into the world, that's the version that people will hear. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like, even if it's unfinished or it could have been done better, like people will just know that version, and you will then, your brain will become familiar, and then any other version will sound different.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't re-record anything for my album. I just kept the same versions. And I thought about re-recording it, but I just knew that those were the versions, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's probably deemed lazy.
Yeah.
But I think I record a song if you've really done it. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's the way it was supposed to sound, right?
Yeah, exactly. Even if it's not.
Did you do all the production work yourself, like guitar, percussion, or as far as the studio album goes?
It was basically like I did a demo at home, and then I if it needed it, I would bring it to my band. And we tended to do like, I think we did about 7 tracks in like one day of the instrumentals. I kind of like, I didn't want to over rehearse. I find rehearsing kind of weird. I get kind of a bit too, it becomes kind of mathematical, and I don't really. So what I do is I'll spend a long time on my own writing it, and then when it's ready, I'll teach it to the band, and they pick it up very quickly, and then we straight away record it. And then I took the stems, and then I kind of mushed it around into how I wanted it to sound. But the most important thing was getting that sort of immediacy of like a band that's just learned something, and like they're not so, there's still something kind of urgent about that. So I tried to do that approach. And then when it came to mixing, I worked with my friend Tom, who lives in a place called Margate, which is like a sort of seaside town in England. And I went down there for a week, and it was really nice. I just hung out at his house, and we just like went through all my production and just kind of made it sound better. We recorded a few bits, and then that was it. But so that final process was probably the most enjoyable part of the whole thing, because it was like just essentially making everything that I've done sound as good as it can, because I'm technically very kind of limited in terms of what I know and what my approach is. So that was kind of cool. But I have to be convinced that I've kind of done all the work to get to that point.
As a piece, as a whole, the album is just so clean. I love the way it sounds. I got to get it on vinyl, but I'm trying to find somewhere in the US that'll ship it, because I've got 2 records on hold right now and from Germany. So it's like shipping right now is really weird. So it's been a challenge, but
yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to cover before we split up here?
I mean, how did you find my music? That's something I'm quite interested in.
I think it was a Discover Weekly on on Spotify, actually. Yeah,
that's great.
That's brought me to a lot of music, and then just like listening to new artist radio, like setups on Spotify. I get into their playlist and then something comes up. But I think yours was a Discover Weekly, and I'm pretty sure it was Night on Earth that hit me first.
Cool. I'm just always interested, because I find that most of the people that listen to my music aren't from England. And I just find that really, like, it's kind of the most important thing to me, is like that kind of communication to like around the world. It's like super cool, connecting. Kind of like the thing you want the most from what you do, is to reach the kind of spectrum of different places.
Yeah, that's actually what I've been discovering with a lot of the people I've talked to so far. I've only talked to a couple out of the US, and like I talked to a duo out of Mexico City, and they're like, yeah, everyone, is like a English speaking, United States or Europe. And then talked to the guy out of Berlin, John Moods. He, said a lot of his listeners are US as well. So I think that's a weird thing, that like the United States consumes a lot of stuff from outside, and then it's almost like a lot of the other countries consume a lot of the US like pop for some.
Yeah.
Even though it's god awful, I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's got to be the best thing about this era, and the worst. Yeah. Like, obviously, like the fact that we are so connected, like, and things can reach. So
yeah, it's great, but if you're in the US, you can't. Everyone has a very, very stern opinion, and I can't stand social media at this point because of it.
No, it's just exhausting.
Yeah.
Like every aspect of it it's like super important, but it's also like it can be really misinformative, and it can be, if you're not in like the headspace to kind of deal with this, it can be really like kind of all consuming and dominating and kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think my flatmate Franklin, who's a big socialist, kind of like involved in a lot of political stuff, and he's very against like social media for political purposes, which I find kind of interesting because his viewpoint is like, if you want to make real change, it's got to come from reality. That the communication, whilst it is like so quick and informative and so many things have happened because of it, and positive things, it can also be overbearing, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this election year is just insane over here. We have people just like ruining family and friend relationships over it, and I think I might agree with your flatmate on that, because it's great for communication. It's so easy to talk to anyone, but because you're missing that human element, you don't know who this person is. It's so easy to just immediately be like, "Oh, you're the fringe. You're on the far right extreme," and say all sorts of terrible things. And then it's like, I always try to, like, if I ever get in a discussion online, I always try to ground that stuff to a halt by saying, like, look, if you had car trouble on the side of the road, I'd help you, and you'd probably help me too. So let's get it out of the way that we're both human. So
Exactly. Yeah.
And then usually the discussion goes somewhere more productive after that. But
yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
I guess we didn't even touch on how COVID's affected you. Has COVID disrupted you at all?
Only in the term. I mean, it's. I'm lucky that I live with great people, and I'm not struggling because of the effects of COVID. So very grateful. But I found it quite, like, when the lockdown was announced in UK, it was almost like a sort of sigh of relief in a way. It was like a kind of like, oh, okay, I can all maybe think a little bit more about helping each other out, and like maybe get on with some creative stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it started off very like, ooh, and then that slowly kind of, I realized that structure is kind of necessary in many ways. Mm-hmm. And the lack of music shows was a bit annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't complain. Like, it's been a weird year for pretty much everyone in the world. I think everyone. But I just tried to get things done. I didn't try and put too many pressures on myself. A lot of people were like, "Oh, you must have been doing so much music during this," and I was like, "Well, not that much."
Yeah.
Like, to be honest. But now things are picking up, and I'm excited about, my own personal future, like what I want to get done. Let's just hope the world doesn't like collapse before we can.
Yeah. Let's hope not.
Yeah.
Growing less and less sure of it every day, but yeah. Are you working on more music under Jerkcurb, or it sounds like you're working with Horsey?
Yeah. I'm currently in the process of doing some new stuff. So
great.
Yeah.
Is it gonna stick to the same kind of sound and theme?
I mean,
if you're willing to disclose that.
Don't know. It's different. It's going to be different.
Awesome.
But it's still in development. So
cool. Are we going to be hearing anything in the next year, you think?
I would hope so. Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited for
definitely
that.
The Horsey album is, I'm very proud of that. So
I got to listen to Horsey a little more. I just barely touched it.
Well, yeah, the stuff we have right now is maybe less representative of what we are. So I think when this record comes out, it's going to be I'm very excited for people to hear that.
Is that going to be soon
I mean,
for Horsey? I mean, yeah.
hopefully. But it's all dependent on a few factors, but it's pretty much in place. It has a bit of a structure now. There's just so much waiting around with COVID stuff. And
Yeah.
like labels dipping in and out and all this boring bureaucracy of nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't personally experienced it, but I think I get it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, looking forward to that. Where can people find you, or where do you want people to seek you out?
Probably just Instagram for the moment, I guess, or Spotify for music. And then if you're interested in like the art, then the Instagram Jerkcurb. Just Google it. Google Jerk, Jerkcurb.
That name that's just truly just like a play on your name, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was 16 when I came up with that, and I genuinely like the how weird those words looked next to each other, how kind of unnatural, and I kind of liked the sound of it and I liked the look of it, so it just stuck. And then it's like 10 years later, and still over 10 years and still there.
Yeah, without knowing your name, I didn't know I was like, what does it mean? But now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's really cool. Well, I won't keep you any longer. Thanks for taking my call and sitting down for so long.
Fun.
Yeah, I appreciate
really
it. All right.
Well, yeah, nice to talk to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, have a good day.
Yeah, you as well. And there is the interview with Jacob Reed, also known as Jerkcurb, member of the band Horsey, artist, and everything else that we just talked about. Obviously, somebody to follow, because not only do you get to catch up on his music, which you heard throughout the episode, but you also get to catch up on his visuals with his art. And his Instagram is loaded with that. We did mention the Instagram accounts for his parents, which they're both really cool. I really like those accounts. I've been following them since our interview. Be sure to follow them everywhere: Instagram, Bandcamp, and wherever else. I have linked down below in the show notes. Next time on None the Lesser, we sit with a guest that really I never expected to be able to sit with. It's somebody I've been listening to since I was in high school. He is the front man for the band Man. Goes by the name of Honus. And yeah, I've been following his stuff so long. And when I reached out and he was down for an interview, you better believe that I was blushing. My whole body was blushing. So I was really excited to sit down with him. We have a really fun conversation, talk about time during a pandemic, releasing one of his first albums in a long time, especially under the name Man. talk about his time in a solo project and even some of his other projects that others might not know of if they listen to him. So tune in for that in a couple of weeks. Make sure to follow None the Lesser on Instagram and wherever you get podcasts. Be sure to subscribe. Reviews are always helpful. And keep an eye out for things to come. This has been Cody Buchanan. Thank you.